And when I tell you that was like the final puzzle piece clicking, because there were just things that I didn't understand about myself and how I interacted with the world. And I always joke that I'm tired of being weird. I want to be wealthy enough to be eccentric. And so when I got that diagnosis, everything clicked into place. And then I did the most neurodivergent thing ever, and I hyper-focused on neurodivergence.
Hello there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks as always for tuning in. I'm your host, Erin Bradley, and I'm so excited today to introduce you to Summer Jelinek. This is the first time we've had a conversation that's probably gone longer than the podcast recording will go. That's how much I like this lady. So I don't even know how our paths crossed, but she is a rock star. She's a leadership expert and a seasoned professional with a knack for turning organizational chaos into calm, cohesive cultures. And one of the things that we were talking about is why do so many high performers look successful on the outside while quietly running themselves into the ground? And I'm like, oh, yes. If you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know why I needed to have Summer on the show. And if you're new here, buckle up. We've got a great show in store for you. And it's probably going to make you want to go deep dive some of the other episodes in the archive. But what I love about Summer is she is a not self-professed. I'm gonna have to cut that. What am I saying? What I love about Summer is her bio describes her as an autistic ADHDer and proud neurodivergent leader. And she brings a unique lens to her work as an international speaker, educator, and consultant. And with over 2 decades of leadership experience at places like Walt Disney World, the Disney Institute, the Center for the Creative Leadership, and even at a ski resort, which I love because I'm here recording in a ski town, Summer connects with audiences worldwide to explore the real, messy, magical world of leadership. So with no further ado, Summer, thank you for being here with us today.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Give us a little backstory on how you got to where you are. I know you're an international keynote speaker, you're a trainer, you obviously have this background in leadership, but what is it that's brought you to where you are and the passion you have for the value you bring to the world today?
Yeah, so I grew up in a tiny town in Louisiana. The town sheriff was my bus driver. That gives you an idea. And then the moment that I realized I could leave, Erin, when I tell you I was out of there, and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I just did jobs that were fun. So like working in a ski resort during the winter and a dude ranch during the summer, bounced around the country and went back to college in my late 20s. Still didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to be in charge. So I got a business management degree. And when I graduated, I decided that I wanted to test my mettle at the hospitality best of the best. And that's when I went to work for Walt Disney World. While I was there, I got my master's in leadership because still didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I still knew I wanted to be in charge. And through a random fluke, ended up working part-time with the Disney Institute. So I did my full-time leadership job and then worked with Disney Institute 4 to 5 days out of the month doing backstage tours. And when they put me on a stage, I was done. I did not know what this life was, but I knew I needed more of it. And that was the beginning of creating my business, which it took a couple of years. So I built my business in 2019, rebuilt it in 2020, as we all did, and then left corporate and became a full-time entrepreneur in 2021. And now I still don't have to decide what I want to be when I grow up. I just do what's fun.
So talk me through this whole concept around like helping people through the messy middle. What have you seen and what have you helped people through? And what does that really mean for someone who's listening?
What's interesting is if you look at an organization, generally you have the individuals that are new and Disney background, forgive me, but pixie dusted. They're excited. They're putting in the time, they're putting in the effort as long as they're getting a return on that effort. And then you have executives that they have it, at least from the outside looking in, they have it figured out. They have their meditation first thing in the morning. They have the assistant that handles all of the things. They're able to spend time with their family. But that middle ground between we don't have the energy to do what we did when we were 20. And if we're being honest, a lot of times we don't have the desire because our needs, our priorities have shifted. We're balancing a lot of new things. But we also don't have the resources that an executive level does. And so when we're thinking through that messy middle, it's how do I handle all of the things that I have to handle? And so a good example, like right now, I'm dealing with a 10-year-old child, and my mother-in-law and my father are both moving to Dallas to be closer, plus running a business, plus having the rest of my family. So it's that messy middle really is what it sounds like, that you're in the middle. And it's just, if you're not intentional about it, it's straight up survival mode.
Totally. And this is one of the things that was the whole predecessor of Pursuing Freedom, the book, the podcast, all the things, is that I came to a point where I hit what I would have thought was the destination of success. And I always say I found myself surviving success, drowning. And I know you talk a lot about the hustle culture. If someone's listening and they're in it, right? They've been running so long that it's all they know. I've always equated it to, it felt like I had built a ship, and the ship was my business, it was my business and my life. And instead of being on the bow of the ship, charting the course, I was in the ocean, drowning, just treading water, patching holes in the bottom of the ship, trying to keep this thing afloat, because God forbid I abandon my post and everything's going to come crumbling down. So there's this belief that if I slow down, everything falls apart. So I better keep powering through. So how do people read that belief and even come to the idea that it could be easier, it could be lighter?
I think the first thing that we need to pay attention to is, what do we actually want versus what have we been told that we should want? And so there's a lot of preconceived notions, especially around women, for men too, but especially around women when we think about hustle culture and that constant grind, where we have to be able to do everything. And if we ask for help, there's something wrong with us. And if you think about the way that our society is built, humans aren't meant to be in the society this way. We're meant to be part of a tribal culture. And we no longer have tribal culture. We have sold it for consumerism. And so I don't want to go down that deep dive, but just thinking through, what is it that we actually need versus what is it that we think we need? And when we can be intentional about creating that experience, defining and creating that experience, and learning to let go of the things that no longer serve us, then we can start creating the life that we're not just surviving, we're also thriving.
So how do you help people give themselves permission? Ultimately, I remember there came a point where I hit another point of overwhelm, and it was intense. I had my best month ever, and I was totally empty, miserable and exhausted, but having earned more than I ever could imagine. And I remember calling a mentor of mine and saying, I feel like I've moored a ship to port and I'm on the wrong island. It's really scary to even say that out loud. And it's hard to believe that we're even worthy of doing it any other way, because the conditioning is so deeply ingrained in us that this is the only way to survive it, to sustain it, to don't complain about it, feel lucky, all these things. Like, how do you help people, just give themselves permission to pivot?
Yeah, so when I left Louisiana, there were a lot of things that I had to unlearn, things that no longer served me on the journey that I was on. And I called a coach because I was really frustrated because I kept having negative thoughts, and I thought that I had outgrown it. And so when I called this coach, same thing, I was frustrated. I was like, I don't understand why I can't break these thought processes. And she said, the first thought is what you have been taught. The second thought is who you were trying to be. So turn down the volume of the first thought, knowing that it will never go away, and turn the volume up on the second thought, leaning into who you're trying to be. That, combined with something, she was brilliant, combined with something that she said later, was that guilt is a small price to pay for happiness. And when I started combining those two pieces and really asking, because I remember, so I'm the breadwinner in my family, and I've always been the ambitious one. And when my daughter was born, when I was pregnant with my daughter, she was a little bit of a surprise. And my mother-in-law said, well, who's going to stay home with the baby? And I was like, well, it ain't me, because I make double what your son makes. And so it was really understanding that to show up as the best version of myself, I could not do that in the way that society had said a woman should show up, especially a woman with children. we need to pay attention to where those pain points, those pinch points are, because we can feel it. Our body tells us when something is not okay. We can feel it happening. But so many times we brush it off with the should. This is what I should do. This is who I should be. This is how I should behave. I should be grateful. And so we have to stop shoulding on ourselves and really think through, what is it that I want? What is that balance that works for me and my family, not what I've been told I should have?
Yeah, I'm curious with this unbecoming. That's what I refer to, the unbecoming. It's the unlearning, you said. Did you have to do some deep work on your own, just outdated neural pathways and programming and all that? And what did that look like? Because the dismantling of these stories is the hardest work of all, because I feel like the action needs to follow the dismantle. Like, you can't just all of a sudden start behaving differently without shifting what you believe to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question, because when I think about the journey was long and there were some pretty significantly painful moments. So I think about when I would go back to small town Louisiana with my family. And I remember one time me and my mom butted heads and she told me, I didn't raise you this way. And it was really trying to figure out, again, breaking the who should I be versus who do I want to be, and then doing the work behind it. It took, in full transparency, a lot of coaching, but also a lot of therapy to determine what were those things that I needed to let go of. But we can't figure out what the next steps are if we don't know what we're trying to get. So I think about it, if I have a map, so for my millennials, my older millennials and Gen X. So you used to be able to, I think it was called the you'd open it up and it was maps. I can't look at the map if I don't know what the destination is. And so many times we don't spend time determining for our life what we're trying to create. What is that destination? We just open the map and start looking at it. And we're like, oh, this looks good, so let's try this. Whereas to be able to do the work, to be able to understand if we are making those shifts, if we are unlearning and undoing and doing those pieces, what is the outcome we're looking for? Because it's a lot easier to do the hard work when we can envision what it is that we're trying to create. Like you said, you're the manifestation ninja, right? It's that same concept. We can't do it if we don't know where we're going.
Yeah. So how did that lead you to finding the clarity to now be pursuing your PhD? I want to talk about this because I love that you just keep on, I'm just going to go do this and I'm going to do it at this time in my life. And it doesn't really matter that I'm just going to go do this. Like, what was the download that you had where you were like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my PhD.
I've always known that I wanted to get my PhD. I've always worn my intelligence as an armor. I remember as a kid saying, I'm not the pretty one, I'm not the clever one, I'm not the charming one, I'm the smart one. And so I always knew that I wanted my PhD. Then as I was going through the unlearning phase, it was, do I still want it, or do I want it because I think that's what I should want, because I'm adding to that armor, and determined that I still wanted it, but I didn't have a question. So I came up with a question. And then about 4 months before I started my PhD program, I was late diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And when I tell you that was like the final puzzle piece clicking, because there were just things that I didn't understand about myself and how I interacted with the world. And I always joke that I'm tired of being weird. I want to be wealthy enough to be eccentric. And so when I got that diagnosis, everything clicked into place. And then I did the most neurodivergent thing ever, and I hyper-focused on neurodivergence. Because I felt like if I was the same person, if I was going through this experience, other individuals are going through that late diagnosed experience too. And it's a bit of a burning down what you thought you knew. And there's a process that's a really uncomfortable process for many individuals that I wasn't expecting. And then it's if they're experiencing it, then corporations are experiencing it too. So now I study neurodivergence in the workplace.
So talk us through what that looks like. This must be obviously affecting the evolution of your work as a keynote speaker, as a trainer. So where do you see this expanding for you, and what kind of rooms and conversations are now being had that's different from what was before?
Yeah, it's been about leadership. I was fascinated with this concept of power, charisma, work ethic, who you know, all of those things that come together to create leadership. And then when I started looking at neurodivergence in the organization and beginning to understand more about what neurodivergence is, what it's not. So it's an umbrella term that covers brains that process information differently. So there was a young man, I can't remember his name, but he did a TED talk and he had the best description of it ever. He said that neurotypical individuals, so they don't have processing differences, are like an Xbox 360, whereas neurodivergent individuals are like a PlayStation. They do the same thing, but you can't take an Xbox 360 game and put it in a PlayStation. It won't work. Mm. So the way they get to that side is different. And so going through and really thinking about how does all of this work and how is it going to impact us as we get more information? Because there's a huge group of us, we're called the lost generation, that were misdiagnosed, not diagnosed at all, primarily women, but not all women. And it's figuring out what do we do with that information? And so it talks a lot about what we're talking about, which is that unlearning and undoing. And then how can I create the life that I'm intentional about versus that was thrust upon me.
I love it. So nowadays, are you going into organizations and working directly with the leaders? And are you also working, how do you even find the rest of your people? This is where
I know, right. Finding my people has been interesting. But one of my favorite topics that I'm doing right now is called Wired Differently, a neurodivergent intro. And it really is introducing people to what neurodivergence is and what it is not. I'm finding that there's a lot of organizations that I wasn't expecting that are hungry for this information because everybody's hearing the term neurodivergence, whether you're neurodivergent or not, everybody's hearing the term and people are trying to figure out what does this mean? Because it doesn't look like what we think it does. Autism in an adult does not look like autism in a child. ADHD in an adult does not look like ADHD in a child. And so helping organizations kind of wrap their minds, and leaders specifically, wrap their minds around what it is and how to respond and react if one of your employees comes up and says, hey, I'm on the autism spectrum. I would like to have a conversation about that. And also helping people who were part of the misgeneration, they start seeing themselves going, oh, wait, I think she's talking about me. So helping people find that information. Long term, I want to shift my leadership business into, right now it's a rough title, but the Neuro Prism. So have you ever seen the album by, I think it was Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah.
Yes, I love that album. And I love that image of the white light going in and hitting and then spreading out. To me, that white light is like our collective humanity when we come together. But the way that our brains process the world around us breaks it up into those different colors. So, like I said, still working title, but working with organizations and individuals to help them unlock the potential to where they can do more with less energy by making very small tweaks.
Okay, so we talked earlier before we started recording about these like small choices that make big shifts. What are some examples of ways that you've experienced that in your own life or with people you work with?
So in my own life, noise canceling headphones have been a lifesaver. They allow me to go very deep when I need to go deep without having to constantly, I call it when the squirrels are squirreling, when my brain is chasing all of the things. But the best example I have ever seen was I was at an organization and they had, it was a photo booth pod, not a photo booth, a phone booth pod where they didn't have the phone, but you could go in to take private meetings and it was 100% soundproof. And they said that a couple of individuals, when they would have a bad day, they would go in and close the door and they would just yell at the top of their lungs. Now the door is clear, so you can see what's going on, which meant that other people were like, that's a good idea. And so when they had a bad day, they would go in, they would close the door and they would just yell to get all of that frustration out. And they found that it made it better. When they could get that frustration out, they could get back to work and they could focus. Now, was that room built for that? 100%, absolutely not. Did the employees turn it into what they needed it to be? Yes. And the interesting thing is, it wasn't just neurodivergent people that were using it. Everybody used it. And that's what we're finding with these small tweaks that organizations can make, is it ends up benefiting everyone, not just a small group. So other examples of this are sensory friendly locations. So you go in, you can control the light, you can control the sound. And then, sorry, this last thought, it just went away. So we're not going to get it today.
One of the things I saw on a clip of one of your keynotes was something you shared about just a prayer that your dad used to say. And he said to you, words matter. And I'm curious, that's something that stuck with you enough to be part of a talk that you give on stage. What does that mean applicably to today's day and age? Like, how do you see words mattering in the way people make it through this whole messy middle, and the way people can start to simplify success and fine tune things to create more spaciousness, more life, more vibrance, right?
Yes. So my dad quit drinking when I was in first grade. And one of the side effects of growing up as a child of a recovering alcoholic was I went to a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. So the adults would be doing adult things and the kids will be outside playing. At every meeting, I would hear the serenity prayer. Let's see if I can remember it. It's grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I always thought it was interesting when my dad was having a bad day, I would see him muttering this prayer. But my dad's an atheist. And so one day I was around 16 and I walked up and I was like, hey, so who are you talking to? And because it just blew, who are you praying to? And he explained that words have power. And these words had the power to remind him to let go of all of the things that he could not control and focus that very small, finite energy that we have on the things that he could control. Because when he poured that precious energy into these small things, he would have big rewards versus what he would call it, pouring his energy into a black hole of nothingness. Now, how this translates to what I do now is our brains are lazy and they have one job, and that job is to keep us safe, keep us alive. And our brain will believe whatever information we give it. And so an example of this is my daughter, she must have been around 3. I had been traveling a lot. I'd been working a lot. And was just feeling like the mom failure of all failures. And I remember I'd gotten her to bed and I'm sitting on the couch and I'm like, oh, it's the worst mom ever. And my brain was like, you know what? You kind of are. When it was time for her to take a bath, you had to tell her 3 times. I don't see other moms having to do that. But then fast forward, it's a couple of weeks later, and I am on the top of the world. We had tried to do a Pinterest thing. It didn't land, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And she went to bed happy. I was sitting on the couch. I was happy. I was like, kind of killing this mom thing. I'm doing a really good job. My brain, you know what? You are. You only had to tell her 3 times to get in the bathtub. Well done, Mom. And the only difference was how I was viewing the situation. And so the words that we use to describe ourselves, the words that we use to determine the future that we want, they all have really important impacts on how we show up. It's Brene Brown, the last Atlas of the Heart. It's just like a dictionary of emotions. In the research that she was doing, she was showing that when we use the wrong word to describe an emotion, so let's say I say I'm frustrated instead of I'm really angry, it causes conflict within ourselves because our brains, no, I don't think that's what we are. And it ends up pouring more energy into something just as simple as trying to describe the emotion that we're feeling.
Wow, that's super cool. So then how do you bring that into the work that you're doing in the workplace? Like, how do you see this being applied to the business owner, the entrepreneur, or even the employee?
Yeah, it's helping individuals understand what they're trying to work towards and what are the words that they need to use. So one of the things I use when I'm working, so I coach late diagnosed neurodivergent individuals. I have a very small subset of individuals that I coach. And one of the things I am working really hard to remove out of their vocabulary is I'm fixing that, or I'm going to fix myself, or anything. Because when we say that we need to fix someone, the implication is that they're broken. Mm-hmm. And we treat broken things differently than if we say we're enhancing or we're building. The other one, Erin, I feel very passionate about this. It's the word common sense. Those 2 words infuriate me because there is nothing common about common sense. And I know people utilize that as it's a quip, but it's a reality because I grew up in the South. We say ma'am, we say sir, we say y'all. Best word in the English language, by the way, is y'all. My husband grew up in Chicago. They do not say y'all. First time he met my dad, he called my dad by his first name. That was not okay. And so when we think about this concept of common sense, when we say somebody should just know it, we're relieving ourselves of any teaching opportunity that exists in that moment, whether it is with a spouse, a child, an employee. When we start saying it's common sense, we remove ownership of that. And it causes a lot of problems because then it's they should read my mind. I don't know about you, Erin, but I have never met a mind reader. I don't think they exist. So
I love how you already said shooting all over yourself, because that's one of my favorite things. Don't shoot all over yourself. But the other word I don't like is can't, because it just means I won't, because I'm unwilling to explore how. It's like the moment you say I can't, you close the door to the possibility. And all we need to do is shift to I wonder if, or what if, just from door closed to door cracked open a little bit from a place of curiosity. And then all of a sudden you can bust that thing wide open because you've cracked it.
Yeah, we have proven it again and again. When we really want something, we can do hard things. When we don't want it, we make excuses. And that's okay. But instead of making an excuse, just say, I don't want to do this. Just take ownership of this isn't important enough to me right now. And that's okay.
Yeah, I love it. So if anyone's listening and either they fit the category of the small subset of people you work with, or maybe they are putting on an event and they want to have you as a speaker, how are the best ways for people to get a hold of you, find you, follow you?
Yeah, so they can go to summerjelinek.com. So it's summer, just like the season, JELINEK.com. That has my list. While I am very passionate about neurodivergence, my keynotes all focus around leadership. So unlocking the magic of leadership based on my time at Disney, Beyond Tomorrow, Thriving in the Workplace of the Future. Those are my two most popular ones. And then I'm on every single platform except for X. So Summer Jelinek on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I feel like I'm missing one, but I don't remember what and Facebook. So they can find me anywhere.
I love it. Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you and have you on the show. And I think we speak a lot of the same language. We could probably go on for a while here, but I want to let you go on with your day. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I had an absolutely wonderful time.
And to all my friends out there listening, if you heard something that spoke to your soul, make sure to send a message to Summer. Share this podcast with someone who needs it in your life. And if you haven't yet slowed down to leave the 5-star review, please do. It helps us continue to attract these amazing humans like Summer and help this content get found so more people can build a life you don't need a vacation from. And if you have any feedback from me or topics you want to hear on the show, make sure to shoot me a DM over at Pursuing Freedom Official on Instagram. I love hearing from you guys. It is my favorite thing because we put this content out there not only to hopefully inspire and educate, but also to connect in the real world. So I love moving conversations from the internet to real life. And I love hearing from my listeners. As always, I love you. I appreciate you. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Pursuing Freedom. If this conversation sparks something with you, be sure you're subscribed so you can keep building momentum towards your life of freedom. And don't keep this to yourself. If you know someone who's on the same journey, be sure to share it with them. And I'll see you next time.